There are cars in this world that are fast as hell, have the best interior, and look absolutely incredible. And those cars always get praised for being the best the world has to offer, like Mercedes-Benz or Lamborghini. But sadly, due to this idea that only the six-figure cars are great, the underdogs that get millions of people to work and back every day are thrown under the rug as something not worth mentioning. Well, today, that changes. I am Mark Roden, and this is what makes Nissan Sentra so great. We've talked about the gas crisis in America on a lot of these deep dives before, and once again, it has blessed us with another car. You see, in the late 70s, early 80s time, there was a gas crisis going on. Gas was not really available, and if it was very expensive. And due to this, people didn't really want to buy the big gas guzzling V8s anymore. They wanted stuff with much better gas mileage, just like how over 80% of you guys don't want to subscribe to my channel for some reason. Why must you hate me? I don't know. I don't get it. But this would pretty much be the start to the Japanese car craze. Companies like Honda, Toyota, and most importantly, Nissan would really start to flourish during these times because instead of big old brolic V8s, they sold much smaller cars with much smaller inline fours and amazing gas mileage, which would be the dawn of the wonderful Nissan Sentra.
The ultra-mileage Nissan Sentra, #1 gas mileage car. Look at that highway number. Look at it.
You need it.
Nobody has it but your Datsun dealer.
You need this mileage. It's #1. You need this car. It's #1.
You need it.
You Nissan Sentra. Datsun. We are driven.
The very first ever Nissan Sentra was pretty much just a rebadged Nissan Sunny, and it would replace the Datsun 210 here in the States, which is big news because this would actually be the second ever Nissan to be built right after the Nissan Stanza, meaning Datsun would soon fall after, and more importantly, this car plays a huge role in making the Nissan name have the status that it has today. Now, admittedly, the first gen Sentra was really nothing to write home about. After all, it wasn't like some of the other cars I've done deep dives on. It wasn't built to go fast, it was built to save gas. That's a freaking cold bar right there. And it would absolutely achieve that goal. The car only came with a very small 1.7 liter inline four that only made a very small 63 horsepower, but it was going to the front wheels, a concept that was, at this time, still very foreign to the rest of the world. Most cars were still being built as rear wheel drive, and having a car be front wheel drive in this time was worrisome to the world, but overall it was an amazing choice since front wheel drive cars are even better on gas than rear wheel drive cars. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not sad that it was front wheel drive and not rear wheel drive, but it was better for gas. But that's pretty much it on the first gen Sentra. It wasn't anything super special to a car guy in that aspect, just another commuter car that was used as a way to save money. Then the second generation came along in 1986, and just like the first gen, it was nothing super special. It had a little bit more power now, sitting at 70 horsepower, and the car looked a lot different. In my opinion, much better, but that was pretty much it. It wouldn't be until the third generation when the car would actually start to get a little bit of an attitude to it.
Through thick and thin, the Nissan Sentra can take just about anything you can throw at it.
The third generation Sentra was once again nothing special at first. Car guys were starting to write this car off as just another commuter car that they didn't have to keep their eye on, but then in 1991, Nissan would shock the world with the Sentra SER. This new and improved Sentra promised to be the car that car guys were looking for, a beefed up commuter car that could save you gas and be fun to drive, and it delivered. It was now equipped with Nissan's SR20DE, which is pretty mumuch the SR20 DET found in the Nissan Silvia, but without the T, meaning no turbo. But don't let that fool you, it was still pretty quick. The SR20DE is a 2-liter inline 4, and the power was all the way up to 140, which is very decent for such a small car. That's double the last car, and it was still getting incredible gas mileage. But if you think they just bumped the power up and called it a day, You're wrong, buddy. They understood that to make a fun car with low power, you can't rely on it to be fun in a straight line. So they gave it tons of suspension upgrades too. McPherson strunts on all 4 dem corners, disc brakes on all 4 dem corners, and a limited slip differential on technically 2 of them corners because it's front wheel drive, was now offered with the legendary SCR. And for those wondering, I don't know what the SCR stands for, but I don't want to know because I like to think it just stands for super extreme race car. On top of all these upgrades, the car had even more to offer versus its competition. It had power windows, alloy wheels, and a sunroof, just to name a few, which were all things that other affordable economy cars weren't offering. Respectfully, suck it, Toyota. Also, with the recent success of the 3rd gen Sentra and the SCR trim, they went to work on the next generation. The 4th gen Sentra would be launched in 1995, and this is probably the one that your mom owned for some reason, and it was on track to be everything great about the previous generation, but just a tad bit better, until it was released to the world with no SCR model. The reason as to why is kind of confusing because the B13 SCR did pretty well, and the only thing that they had to do to make the B14 SCR stand out from the base model was give it the SR20 Det from the Sylvia line, but they didn't do it. Instead, the base model was now offered with the previous SCR's SR20 DE, still making 140 horsepower, and it pretty much was the same as that car, but with less upgrades to be honest, no soul in it. It had no limited slip differential, the independent suspension was now gone, and it looked butt ugly during a time when we were getting so many tuner cars from seemingly every manufacturer, which made all the Sentra fanboys kinda upset enough to make Nissan notice their mistake.
The Nissan Sentra. The last thing it performs like is a compact.
Finally, in the year 2000, after the computers didn't all shut down and we didn't go into an apocalyptic state, Nissan gave us another SCR Sentra with the launch of the 5th generation, or B15. And this time, it had even more letters to remember. Spec V. Now with an increasingly long name and a 2.5 liter inline 4, the car made a very respectful 175 horsepower. On top of the increased power, the car was still getting great gas mileage and had so many upgraded suspension pieces, going back to having a limited slip differential as well. It was finally a track-worthy car that you could get your groceries in again, and to me, this car means a lot actually. I still, to this day, remember loading up Need for Speed Underground and racing around in a B15 Sentra, and it really was one of the first tastes that I personally got into the tuner world. Nowadays, I've learned of many more cars out there that catch my eye, but I will never forget what the B15 Sentra did for me as a little 8-year-old car enthusiast drinking my Capri Suns and slapping my friend for some reason. So even though the rest of the Sentra fans didn't really like the B15 for being a bit heavier than the B13, I have to say a big thank you to Nissan for making this car. Fast forward another 7 years to 2007 and Nissan would do it again. The launch of the 6th gen Sentra, or B16, would prove that the Sentra was here to stay, or so we thought. The car was only continuing to get larger, which didn't really sit too well with the Sentra fans, and this one was once again kinda ugly looking, but I think due to that, this generation is honestly criminally underrated. It used the same 2.5 liter QR25DE that was found in the B15 Sentra, but this time it was beefed up a little bit to save 177 horsepower in the SCR and a very nice 200 horsepower in the SCR Spec V. It once again was given tons of suspension upgrades and lots of nice little trim pieces to make it stand out from the base model, but sadly they would cut ties with the manual transmission and opt for a CVT instead, which yes, I know is technically faster. Oh, it's so faster. But who cares, Nissan? The Sentra was never about being the fastest. It was about being the most fun and practical.
Please! Please! No!
In 2012, they would release the B17, or 7th generation, and now they were officially a big boy, no longer being associated with the compact class. It was also no longer available with an SCR model, instead being given the Nismo trim that we've seen on many Nissans before in the past. The Nismo came with a very measly 1.6 liter turbocharged inline-4, and for the first time in Sentra history, it got slower, only making 188 horsepower even with the added bonus of the turbo. It did have much better suspension upgrades, but the car was also significantly heavier, and because of that, this would kind of be the end to all the Sentra fans' hopes and dreams of seeing another car like the B13 SER that we had all the way back in 1990. Now, yes, you can argue that the Sentra was from the very beginning meant to be a commuter car and nothing more, and that we got lucky that we were even given the SER trim in the first place, and I do agree with you, but at the same time, so was the Civic. And the Civic Si just continues to do better and better. So even though we all love the Sentra here, give me one good reason as to why I should go out and buy a Sentra Nismo over a Civic Si.
This quarter. Cool.
Drop the taco. Get in the car.
Does this Sentra feel like a compromise to you?
Wait, what?
The handling, it's good, right? No compromise there.
Nope. Watch this.
In 2019, we got the 8th generation Sentra, and it only proved what the fans were starting to think. The Sentra was going back to just a commuter car. It's been around for 3 years now, and still the only option available is a 2-liter inline-4 making only 149 horsepower. Once again, getting even slower and even heavier, meaning any bit of hope that we had of seeing another SCR Sentra has gone just completely out the window. It really does hurt to see where all these car companies are deciding to go nowadays, whether it to be to make the car fully electric, or in this case to just stop building something worth talking about for seemingly no reason. I don't want the new Sentra to steer you away from what the old SCRs, what made those so special. They were great, and sure, they might not have been the best in their class when they came out, but they had soul, and more importantly, horsepower. I really wish I opened your eyes to this little commuter car with a bit of a teenage angst to them, and to Nissan, why don't you make another car that might spark a little kid's interest in the tuner world again? Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's deep dive on the Nissan Sentra. Now, I want to make it very clear, I do love the Sentra, but you can't lie, what they're doing with the freaking Sentra line nowadays, the 7th and 8th gen, it's just not as special as the SCRs were. Honestly, even the 6th generation Sentra SCR, the one that's really ugly, that nobody really talks about, is still worth mentioning, at least somewhat worth mentioning, but the new ones, they literally are slower than the 7th gen. Like, why would you... or the 6th gen, my bad. They're literally slower though. It like doesn't make any sense to me. But I just wanted to put that out there before anybody's all like, no, the 8th gen's really cool. It's really good on gas. I know that it's still good on gas, but I don't care. I like when they were fast. That was cool when they were fast. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you liked the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Das Vidania. Have a nice night.